Sometimes life is so hard and harsh that we lose hope, and sometimes we hate ourselves and lose our passion for living, and we often do things unintentionally or even intentionally, and we often regret it afterwards. Yes, sometimes actions are beyond our control, but we are the cause of the results. Depression, irrational agitation, and stress are caused by many things, but the results are the same: illness, madness sometimes, and the alienation of those around you. Our story today is about a person who entered a cycle of depression that he thought would never end. But God wrote him another life that he never expected. I hope you like the story, and don't forget to like and subscribe. John Simmons woke up to another gray morning. His small, cluttered apartment was silent, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the corner. The curtains, thick and heavy, blocked out most of the weak winter sunlight, casting the room in a dim, oppressive gloom. John lay in bed for a few moments, staring at the ceiling. The cracks in the plaster seemed to mirror the fractures in his own life. At 32, he felt as though he was stuck in a loop of disappointment, isolation, and hopelessness. For as long as he could remember, the world had felt like it was covered in a perpetual layer of gray. A dullness that crept into his thoughts, colored his interactions, and clouded his dreams. Years of negative thinking, personal failures, and a deep, unshakable depression had eroded his sense of self-worth. His job at a call center was monotonous and draining, a dead end that only deepened his sense of futility. He had long since stopped pursuing anything beyond getting through each day. Even his attempts to reach out to friends or family felt hollow. His interactions with others were perfunctory, devoid of true connection. It seemed like no matter how much he tried, nothing could pull him out of the grayness. It was as if the color had been drained from his life, and there was no way to bring it back. That morning, though, something unusual happened. As he sorted through a pile of unopened mail on his kitchen table, John came across an envelope that caught his attention. It wasn't like the usual bills or advertisements. It was a handwritten envelope, addressed to him in the delicate script of his grandmother, Eleanor. Her handwriting was familiar, always warm and comforting, even from a distance. John hesitated, his fingers brushing over the edges of the paper. His grandmother had passed away 2 years ago, and he hadn't heard from her since. As he opened the envelope, an old photograph slipped out. It was a picture of him as a child, no older than 8, holding a brightly colored kite in a wide, carefree smile. The background was a grassy field under a summer sky, the wind ruffling his hair as the kite soared high above. Along with the photo, there was a note written in his grandmother's familiar, loving handwriting. "Dearest John, I found this picture and thought you might like it. You were so happy that day, determined to make the kite fly even though there was barely any wind. And you did it. Remember, no matter how gray the skies, the wind will come. You just have to hold on tight. Love always, Grandma." John stared at the photograph for a long time. He could barely remember that day, but the image of his younger self, full of hope and determination, struck something deep inside him. It was like a light flickering in the darkness, a reminder of a time when he had believed in the possibility of success, in the thrill of trying, even when things didn't seem perfect. For the first time in months, John felt something stir inside him. It wasn't much, a fleeting moment of nostalgia, perhaps, but it was enough to nudge him toward a decision. Maybe, just maybe, he could fight back against the gray. The next morning, John made a choice. It wasn't a grand, dramatic shift, but it was a start. He pulled himself out of bed earlier than usual and went for a walk outside. The chill of the early morning air hit him as he stepped onto the sidewalk, and for a brief moment, he felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. The world outside his apartment was still gray, but it felt less suffocating somehow. He walked to the nearby park, his breath visible in the cool air. Sitting on a bench, He took in his surroundings: the joggers passing by, the dogs chasing after balls, the families bundled up in winter coats. He let himself take it all in, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to think that there might be more to life than his own struggles. It was a small, quiet moment of realization, but it was a turning point. John knew that his thoughts, his mindset, had been the heavy cloud hanging over him. He had allowed negativity to define his world, and in doing so, he had locked himself in a cage of his own making. But that day, for the first time in years, he saw a glimpse of a different reality, a life that could be more than just surviving. Over the next few weeks, John slowly began to make changes. He started with small things, writing down one thing he was grateful for each day. At first, it felt awkward, even silly. He had grown so accustomed to seeing the negative side of everything that finding something to be grateful for felt foreign. But he persisted, writing down even the simplest things. The sun peeked through the clouds today, or I had a good conversation with my coworker. He also started to replace his hours of mindless social media scrolling with something more productive. He signed up for an online graphic design course, something that had always intrigued him, but that he had never had the confidence to pursue. It wasn't a radical change, but it was a step forward. As he learned the basics of design, he began to feel a spark of excitement, something he hadn't felt in a long time. At first, the self-doubt crept in. "What's the point? You're too old to change now," his mind whispered. But John fought back. "I'm not too old. I'm just starting. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying." It was a mantra that he repeated to himself whenever the negative thoughts tried to take over. Slowly, but surely, those thoughts lost their grip on him. John also sought therapy, something he had resisted for years. The idea of talking to a stranger about his deepest insecurities felt uncomfortable, but he realized that he couldn't continue to carry his burdens alone. With the help of a compassionate therapist, John began to peel back the layers of his past, understanding the roots of his depression. He learned that he wasn't broken, that his struggles were part of being human, not signs of failure. 6 months later, John was a different person. His apartment, once a dark and cluttered reflection of his mind, was now bright and organized. He spent his mornings at the park, jogging or simply sitting and enjoying the fresh air. He had started working as a freelance graphic designer, taking on small projects and steadily building his portfolio. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was fulfilling. He was learning, growing, and finding joy in the process. One Saturday, he passed by a kite shop while walking home. On impulse, he went inside and bought a bright red kite, the same color as the one in the photograph his grandmother had sent him. The moment he held it in his hands, he felt something deep within him shift. The memory of that summer day, the young boy determined to make the kite fly, flooded his mind. The following weekend, John returned to the park. He found a quiet spot on the hill and launched the kite into the air. As it caught the wind, it soared higher and higher, just as he had in the photo. And in that moment, with the kite dancing against the sky, John understood. It wasn't just about a kite, it was about his life. He had held on tight, even when the wind was weak. And now, finally, he was flying. A year later, John's freelance work had turned into a full-time graphic design business. He had grown his client base, built a small team, and even began volunteering at a local mental health organization. He shared his story with others, hoping to inspire those who, like him, had once felt trapped in the gray. John had come to realize that life wasn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It was about learning to find the strength to move through it, to fly despite the winds. The gray days would always come, but now, he knew how to face them. He had learned that the color in life didn't come from external circumstances. It came from how you chose to see the world. As he stood on a hill overlooking the city one evening, the sun setting behind him, John let the wind carry his kite high into the air. It danced and soared, and for the first time in years, he felt truly free. The gray days were behind him, and the sky was full of possibility.